Intelligent, meaning having an intense amount of knowledge. For example, dolphins are known to be highly intelligent animals that can solve complex problems and understand human voices. Intensive, moving on. Intensive means involving like a lot of effort, energy, or like attention in like a short period of time. For example, she enrolled in an intensive English course to improve her speaking skills quickly. Knowledgeable is knowing a lot about many things or about like a particular subject or topic. For instance, our tour guide was extremely knowledgeable about local history and architecture. Moving on, lecture is an educational time talk, I guess, to an audience, especially focus on like students at a university. For example, the professor delivered an engaging lecture on economics. Lecture as a verb means to give a formal talk to an educational audience. So basically, to give a lecture to a group of people. For example, the teacher lectures on economic at the university. Mock exam is a noun phrase which means an exam that is taken before the real exam, and usually it's for the sake of practicing or rehearsing. For example, students take mock exam to practice time management before the test. Plagiarize is a verb meaning to copy another person's ideas, words, or like the work and pretend like that is your own. For example, students who plagiarize their essays will face serious discipline. Oh, what's happening? Self-study is a noun meaning the act of studying by yourself without a teacher or without like help. For example, self-study requires a lot of personal discipline. Seminar is a meeting for discussion or training, usually involved a small audience and a teacher. For example, we have a small group seminar to discuss our research papers. Special needs is a particular educational or like requirement, physical requirement for people who have disabilities or like difficulties. For example, the schools provide tailored support for children who have special needs. Tuition is the amount of money that you need to pay, right? So it's like it's teaching or instruction, and like especially of individuals, pupils, or small groups. For example, she pays her tuition fees through a part-time job. Tutorial as a noun mean a period of study which is when a teacher or like a knowledgeable person will give you tips and studying on a particular subject. For example, if you don't understand the assignment, you can ask questions during the tutorial. Brush up on means to quickly improve your skills or whatever it is that you've learned in the past. For example, I need to brush up on my French before taking the trip to Paris. Come round to or come around to is to change your opinion or decision because you've been persuaded. For example, she eventually came around to the final decision. Moving on, come up with means to think or like to come to like think up an idea or a solution or plan. For example, of that work, can you come up with a better strategy for our presentation? Face up to is to accept and deal with a difficult situation or a circumstance. For example, you have to face up to your responsibilities instead of running away in that scenario. Figure out means to understand or find a solution to a problem by thinking immensely. For example, it took me hours to figure out how to assemble the wooden chair. Hit upon means to suddenly have an idea being crashed up onto your mind. For example, while brainstorming, he hit upon a brilliant idea. Make out means to manage to process something with difficulty. For example, it was so snowy outside, I could barely make out the road signs. Moving on. Mull over means to think carefully about something for a long time. For example, let me mull over your proposal for a few days. Piece together is to learn the truth about something by gathering or grouping information together. For example, police and detectives managed to piece together the evidence and found out who was the criminal. Puzzle out means to solve a complex problem through critical thinking. For example, the scientists tried to puzzle out the mystery behind the ancient symbols. Read up on or read up about or read up means to read a lot of information about a subject in order to learn about something. For example, I'm going to read up on, let's say, renewable energy sources. Swat up on to study hard for an examination, and is usually involving things such as cramming. For example, he spent the whole day swatting up on biology for the final exam. Take in means to observe and understand information or to deceive someone, but it's usually meaning the former. So there was so much information in the lecture that I couldn't take it all in. Think over means to consider an idea or plan carefully before making a decision. Think through is to consider all the possible consequences of a course of action before doing something. For example, you need to think through the consequences of your own action before you do something. Think up is to invent or create a false story or a false event. For example, he had to think up of an excuse for being late to work. Go to your head means to boast or be arrogant after you've gained any success. For example, don't let a little success go to your head. Have your wits about you is to be alert, to be able to think quickly and respond quickly in a situation. For example, driving in heavy traffic requires you to have your wits about you at all times. In the dark, meaning to not know anything about something, usually because it's kept as a secret. For example, we were kept in the dark about the company's plan until the very last minute. Know what's what is to have a good understanding of how things work. For example, after working in this industry for decades, she really knows what's what. Not have a leg to stand on means to have no logical explanation or evidence for your argument. For example, her case doesn't have a leg to stand on. Not see the wood for the trees, meaning to be unable to understand the main point, the main picture, because you're too focused on the main ideas. For example, he gets so bogged down in the mirror details that he can't see the wood for the trees. Put two and two together means to guess or like to come up with a decision on what is happening based on what you've seen or heard. For example, she saw the evidence and put two and two together. Quick or slow on the uptake. Quick on the uptake means to take a short time to understand something. Slow on the uptake means to take a long time to understand something. For example, my younger brother is very quick on the uptake when it comes to technology versus my grandparents is very slow on the uptake when it comes to technology. Ring a bell means to find something similar or like familiar that reminds you of something, although you can't remember it. For example, that name's ring a bell. Round the bend means to be insane or mentally unstable. For example, working 8 hours per day is enough to send anybody around the bend. Split hairs means to argue about like very small and unnecessary details. For example, don't split hair over a few dollars. Take stock of means to pause or like to evaluate something before deciding like what to do. For example, after failing the project, she sat down to like take stock of her career choices.